All right. I have no idea why my computer loves to lag, but anyway, we are live. So, for those of you who have not caught the last little blog series, basically done a 10 success tips on on how to navigate implementing a new regime in terms of your health and fitness, but a lot of the principles obviously have broad application to any change that you're trying to make in your life. And today we're actually up to number 10, and this is probably my favourite one. So the success tips as well are really how to overcome sort of the typical challenges or challenges that come up along the way that most people experience, right? In my experience with dealing with clients and so on. So my favourite one, because this one is probably the one where people realise that they might need some help or they might need to level up, right? So this typically happens where people have had a level of a success in terms of actually, they've implemented, they've gone away and they've done their own, research, and they've come up with a plan, and they've stuck to a diet that they've created themselves, and they've also, started to exercise and implemented a regime, and they've had some really great results. They've lost some kilos, had some weight loss, but then they start to stagnate and start to feel tired. They start to maybe put some weight back on, or they're just not quite getting to the next level or getting the body composition that they need. And quite often it's because they've found something that works and they're very attached to it and they keep doing it. And I find this a lot when people have, they get themselves down to quite a low caloric intake and then sort of don't realise that you can't kind of sustain that over time, and your metabolism adapts and your body adapts, and you've got to keep tricking it, essentially. So this tip is actually how to maintain your progress. So first of all, I think it's really important to recognise that you can't obviously maintain, your rate of progress indefinitely. And when you first start, you have, there's almost like a law of diminishing returns. So when you start, you get all these great things can happen really quickly for some people. So you'll shift quite a lot of kilos in the first regime because you've implemented so many new habits. So a lot of people who get so sick of where they're at and really want to make a change, they start eating better, but they also actually just take out everything that they... so it's not only that they're eating well in terms of food, but they've actually stopped doing all the things that weren't so healthy for them. So, for a period of time, they might stop drinking or partying, they might get better sleep. So they actually do quite a lot of habits that are really good at once, and so they get really good results. I mean, the reality is, if you stop drinking for like a month, you'd probably find that you lose a couple of kilos. If you stopped eating more than you needed, you're going to lose a couple of kilos. So these things can happen quite rapidly, particularly if you've never undertaken a diet or a training regime before. So those results can happen really quickly. But then you get to a point where it plateaus and you're not making any more progress, and things start to feel a bit hard, and you start to feel a bit low in energy and so on, right? Now, this is because, the law of diminishing returns, right? So, and if you think about it, it makes sense. So one, your body adapts, and two, if you're actually losing weight, then if you think about it, you need less calories again because your weight has changed. So you don't have the same metabolic rate because you're not the same person from a size-wise perspective. So your caloric needs change, right? The other part is that your body starts to get used to what it's doing, and then it will start to go, oh, well, maybe we need to start storing, because if this is going to be a period of starvation, we need to, go into the opposite mode. The other thing is mentally you get bored, right? Because if you're not progressing with whatever regime you're doing, you kind of get sick of doing the same things. It becomes a bit of Groundhog Day, and the enthusiasm and the motivation can start to wane. I guess it's important to note, though, it makes sense also that you will slow down in terms of your rate of progression, because if you think about it, you can't keep, if you've managed to lose 2 or 3% body fat, every couple of weeks, well, you can't keep doing that because, you can't get to negative 3% body fat, right? So at some point it has to stagnate and stop, or, you'll kind of die. But anyway, the other thing is as well is that as you get leaner, and your body will start to fight to hold on to the last little bit of body fat as well, because it's like, well, I didn't mind getting rid of all this other stuff, but now we're starting to, now I'm not comfortable. Now this is starting to hurt a little bit, and you need a little bit of, a padding, right? That's kind of your body saying that. And so you kind of have to constantly outwit your body and your mind, right? Because your mind will also find, and your subconscious will find other ways to kind of creep in and self-sabotage, because remember, it doesn't like change. It doesn't like things that are hard. So it'll always try and get you back to, what its status quo is, or what it's used to. So the trick is, in terms of maintaining progress, is you really need to establish what your baseline is, find out what works, get to a point where things are happening seamlessly. So you're like, okay, well, I'm training consistently, I'm eating well consistently, and so on. Then once you've got that established, so once you've got the basics established, then the trick is to go, okay, well, now I need to figure out how I'm going to monitor things a little bit more, so that I can, start to actually track what's happening and make the necessary adjustments, right? Now, the flip side here is that sometimes people get a bit too enthusiastic, and then they start having Excel spreadsheets to start tracking everything through my Fitbit, my Fitness Pal, and 50 different apps, and before it hits 7 a.m, they've got a complete data download on everything they've done in the last 24 hours. We don't need to that level. We just need a couple of little things to measure, what's actually happening, like how many calories you're actually eating, and what's the macronutrient breakdown, for example, and can we optimize that? Because there's certain things you can manipulate in terms of nutrient timing, nutrient type, as well as calories. And sometimes counterintuitively, you actually need to go and do a refeed, or actually spike up the metabolism again and have a lot more food to actually lose weight, which is a great place to be, by the way, if you're ever lucky enough for that. So we get to that. The other piece is as well, right? Your body will get stronger, and the more muscle it has, the stronger it becomes, and the easier things come. So your body likes to make things easy. So if you're continuously lifting weights, like, well, this is taking a lot of energy, we better build some muscle so it's not as hard next time, right? So unfortunately, that means that the better we get, the harder our exercise actually has to get. But it also doesn't feel as hard. So it's kind of light at the end of the tunnel, I guess. I don't know. Depends if you like exercise or not. So the way to do that, to keep things interesting and make sure you're always progressing to a goal is, you can play around with, the frequency, the volume, the timing, duration of your sessions, for example. There's other things around even just the intensity of the level of training, the type of training as well. Sometimes, for me, for example, like, I obviously do a lot of weightlifting, but every now and again I will do a deload week where I do nothing but yoga, which is amazing. It sounds particularly great right now because I'm doing about 4 hours of training. So a week of doing nothing but yoga, or just imagine for some reason that I'll be somewhere like in Bali, getting fed like drinks and coconuts and doing yoga, and then jumping in a swimming pool. Might happen, might not. It hasn't happened so far, let's just put it that way. But it's a good dream. I do like the visual. Anyway, my point is that you can't keep following the same program, regardless of if it's what you're eating or how you're training, and expect to keep having progress. Like, you're going to stagnate, and you're going to get to a point where that becomes your maintenance. So you need to be flexible and agile in that approach, because as I said, sometimes it's not actually just about dropping the calories. It could actually be the way you cycle those calories, and it could actually even be spiking those calories back up, so that you can go back out and come back down in. So a lot of things happen there, and it's really hard to know what's going to work or not, and a lot of experimentation. So that can that's when you can start to get into that over-analyzing point of view, and and paralysis by analysis and all those sorts of things as well. So this is the fun part, because this is where people tend to realize that maybe they need help, and having somebody else who's an experienced coach, or someone who's been there before, or even someone who's outside in, can actually help you to have a look at what's happening, what things to try next, and then how to monitor that, and then to regroup and adapt the program again if you need to. So yeah, I think the thing is that you need to be prepared to make changes when they're necessary and not become attached to something that works. Because just because something works for a period of time doesn't mean that it'll work forever. And this is where you find as well, like a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I know what to do because I have gotten to a body composition, or when I was younger, I was able to do this and that. So I know that if I just do, 5 times a week of training and just look after my food, I'll get back to the weight that I want. And it's like, you might be surprised that your body is not the same as what it was when you last did that. So you might have to take a different approach. Anyway, my point being is that the more open you are, the more flexible and agile you are to adapting to the situation around you and to change, the better off you're going to be in terms of maintaining your progress. And realistically as well, if you think about it, the more resilient you're going to become and the more empowered you're going to become. So hope you enjoyed the vlog series. Let me know your thoughts, if you had any key insights from this, and if there's any other topics you would like me to cover. All right, until next time, take care.